आतंकियों ने हमारी बहनों का सिंदूर उजाड़ा था। इसलिए भारत ने आतंक के ये हेडक्वार्टर्स उजाड़ दिए।
Pakistan claims to be a victim of global geopolitics, a country surrounded by threats and misunderstood by the world. But behind the smokescreen of self-pity lies a doctrine that sees India not just as a rival, but as an existential threat. From wars and terror strikes to tactical nukes and Chinese handouts, Pakistan's entire defense posture orbits around India. But is this fear genuine, or a convenient excuse for perpetual hostility? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. The 2025 US Defense Intelligence Agency report lays it out plainly. Pakistan sees India as a fundamental threat to its existence. This perception isn't new. It's the spine of Islamabad, or for that matter, Rawalpindi's military doctrine. It explains Pakistan's aggressive nuclear modernization, dependence on Chinese military support, and constant stoking of cross-border tensions. It also explains why Pakistan sponsored attacks from 1947's tribal invasion to 2025's Pahalgam massacre, form a bloody arc of denial and deflection. India may be advancing globally, but Pakistan still seems stuck in 1947. The 2025 DIA report doesn't mince words. It outlines how Pakistan's national security doctrine is entirely predicated on the belief that India is out to dismantle it. This is not merely strategic hedging, it's psychological entrenchment. According to the report, Pakistan's political and military elite operate under the assumption that India harbors ambitions to dismember the Pakistani state. This paranoia isn't theoretical. It shapes budgetary decisions, foreign alliances, and even the internal propaganda machine. The report notes that this perception has been institutionalized across military academies, intelligence briefings, and public education. School children are taught more about India's threat than about democratic values or economic development. It's not security policy, it's their national identity. The US Defense Intelligence Agency report of 2025 clearly says that Pakistan considers India an existential threat, but also goes on to elaborate on the ties between Pakistan and China and how Pakistan depends majorly on China when it comes to its defense procurement. To discuss this and more, I'm being joined by a security expert from Wilson Center, Michael Kugelman. Michael, thank you so much for joining us here on India Today Global. Let's begin with the report itself. India, an existential threat, that's the argument, or is that certainly something that Pakistan has been, and the strategic community has been thinking is necessary now for them to procure and to acquire the kind of arms they're trying to acquire from various countries?
Right. So, I mean, this assessment here from the U.S. Defense community, it's not necessarily a new one in the sense that one has often heard this notion of Pakistan viewing India as an existential threat, particularly the Pakistani military establishment. And what I take away from this intelligence assessment is how there is a link made between Pakistan viewing India as an existential threat and the nuclear factor. So, I mean, the assessment explicitly says that Pakistan regards India as an existential threat, and that has translated to policies that include developing battlefield nuclear weapons. There's also discussion in the assessment about Pakistan's modernizing its nuclear arsenal. So it seems that one of the main focuses on Pakistan in this assessment is on Pakistan's proliferation policies, which I think is certainly notable, given that if we look at the recent India-Pakistan confrontation, that one could argue that one reason why the U.S. was increasingly concerned about the trajectory of the confrontation was fears of the possibility of nuclear escalation. But yes, absolutely. I mean, to your point, I think that the concern on the part of the U.S. is very clear here that because Pakistan, in the view of the assessment, views India as an existential threat, it's leading to a variety of policies on the part of Pakistan that include taking a number of steps that will be concerning for U.S. interests, and that includes doubling down on Pakistan's very significant military relationship with China.
Well, that certainly is the most important aspect. We see President Trump post the operations that were carried out by India, Michael, we see President Trump, one, having taken credit, but also because Pakistan agreed with the president, he's been lauding the Pakistani premier and almost hyphenating India and Pakistan in a scenario where China is only to gain with any conflict between India and Pakistan. What's the reading within Washington, D.C.? Who's advising President Trump? What's the assessment, and why are they not looking at the real threat over here?
I think that we shouldn't overstate this idea of rehyphenation. I mean, yes, I mean, if you look at the messaging coming from President Trump and from other senior U.S. officials in once the ceasefire was announced, yes, it appears to reflect rehyphenation. But I think that the broader U.S. policy has not changed, and I don't think that we should take these comments by Trump as an expression, as a formal expression of policy. I think that much of what he said has been what I would describe as off the cuff. I think that in due course, once things blew over in the coming days and weeks, we're going to have what I would describe as a reversion to the norm, in the sense that the U.S. will go back to emphasizing the strengthening of its partnership with India, which of course has been the case for several decades. And it will go back to looking at its relationship with Pakistan as a relationship that has to be a workable one, but the one that's nonetheless going to be a limited one. There are so many very strong strategic and commercial and other imperatives from a U.S. perspective governing the need to ensure that the relationship with India remains what it is, while separating that from any considerations about Pakistan. But I would say this. One of the reasons why we got to this point where Trump was saying what he did and other U.S. officials were saying what they were, about the recent crisis, is the factor of escalation risks, right? As the crisis, as the confrontation became more intense, and as the hostilities became more concerning, I think that attention in Washington focused on the need to call for de-escalation and essentially to call for both sides, and I emphasize the term both sides, to work together to bring down tensions. But that's crisis management policy. It's not a broader view or a broader U.S. policy toward India or Pakistan in terms of hyphenation. So this is why I think that in due course, we're going to return to how things were before this confrontation exploded. However, I would argue this: the longer that President Trump continues to make comments like the ones he's made, I think the more difficult it will be for New Delhi to simply shrug this off as a case of Trump being Trump, and more, get to a point where there'd be worry about what could come next.
Well, let's talk about one very clear assessment of the 2025 Defense Intelligence Agency report. It says that Pakistan is modernizing its nuclear arsenal and maintaining the security of its nuclear materials and nuclear command and control. That Pakistan is also almost certainly procuring WMD applicable goods from foreign suppliers and intermediaries, Michael.
Right, yeah, and this is a very significant part of the report, and as I said before, it's what jumps out from the section on Pakistan. Much of the focus and the concern expressed is about Pakistan's nuclear weapons policies. Now, my understanding is that in recent years, U.S. Official views of nuclear safety and security issues in Pakistan have strengthened in the sense that U.S. officials have become more confident about Pakistan's nuclear safety and nuclear security issues. However, the fact that there's so much emphasis here in this report on military modernization in Pakistan that entails strengthening the components and capacities of its nuclear weapons program, suggests to me that the position that the U.S. took in this recent crisis with India will continue to play out the next crisis. In other words, what I'm saying is that U.S. approaches to India-Pakistan crises, and especially India-Pakistan military confrontations, will continue to be shaped through that nuclear escalation risk lens. And I'm not sure if that's how New Delhi would prefer that the U.S. looked at these types of contingencies. But based on what we're seeing in this most recent intelligence assessment, it's very clear that the U.S. intelligence community continues to be concerned about Pakistan's nuclear weapon developments and capacities.
Well, also the help that it gets from China. Now, it's not just about the military largesse that they receive from China. Pakistani forces have been in touch with China and receiving all the support and help from China with regards to the very same foreign materials that Pakistan needs to support their WMD program.
Yes, no, absolutely, and this is another important theme from the assessment. But I think that we shouldn't forget as well about what's happening on in terms of conventional weaponry. I mean, China has very clearly been continuing to provide Pakistan with very significant forms of weaponry that were used in this most recent crisis. I mean, these Chinese-made jets that Pakistan used, and if you look at that in combination with some of the other
The anti
new
missile defense
developments.
system.
Yes, exactly, that too. But also the fact that it's not just China, right? The fact that Pakistan was using Turkish-made drones in this most recent crisis. It suggests that Pakistan appears to be getting to the point where it's been able to diversify its sources of external suppliers of weaponry, and we know that India has been very adept at this. Filling gaps in indigenous defense production systems. India has been able to build on the support it's gotten from Russia by increasingly importing weaponry from the U.S., from France, from Israel. Pakistan, we think so much about what it gets from China, but now that it's relying on battlefield-ready weaponry such as drones from Turkey, I think that's pretty significant as well in terms of looking at what type of capacities Pakistan could bring to bear in terms of its conventional weapons capabilities in the next crisis with India. I think that's pretty significant.
The 2025 U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency report says Pakistan is still obsessed with building and maintaining weapons of mass destruction. Nuclear warheads, delivery systems, ballistic missiles. Islamabad isn't just holding on to them, it's actively upgrading them. And at the center of this dangerous buildup, China. The 2025 Intelligence Agency report pulls no punches on Pakistan's military ambitions and its cozy relationship with China. Pakistan isn't just worried about cross-border skirmishes or militant attacks at home. It's doubling down on one thing above all: nuclear modernization. Pakistan sees India as an existential threat and is rushing to develop battlefield nuclear weapons to keep India's conventional military advantage in check. That means Pakistan isn't playing defense. They're pushing for a nuclear edge that's designed for quick, tactical use in conflict zones. This isn't some abstract threat. It's a real and dangerous escalation in an already volatile region. Pakistan's nuclear program is not just about building bombs. It's also about keeping control and security tight over its nuclear materials and command systems. But here's the catch. The report says Pakistan almost certainly buys weapons-grade materials and tech from foreign suppliers. And guess who's the main backer? China. China's economic and military support for Pakistan is no secret. Pakistan regularly trains with China's People's Liberation Army, doing joint exercises including a new air drill as recently as November 2024. The report points out that foreign materials fueling Pakistan's WMD programs mostly come from China and are sometimes smuggled through places like Hong Kong, Singapore, Turkey, and the UAE. So while Pakistan talks tough about defending itself, it's quietly depending on Chinese tech and money to fuel its nuclear ambitions. But it's not all smooth sailing. Terrorist attacks targeting Chinese workers on Pakistani soil, 7 Chinese nationals killed just last year, are a real headache, testing this friendship. Also, Michael, the assessment talks about the fact that while we see cross-border terrorism coming from Pakistan into India, the Chinese should really be worried about their own being targets and being targeted in Balochistan, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, when it comes to insurgents within Pakistan.
Absolutely, and you're right. The fact that this is mentioned in the report, the fact that the Chinese concerns about terrorism for their own interest and their own personnel have grown in Pakistan because they've been hit. That's important, and we don't think about this as much now, given what just happened in recent days with Chinese weaponry helping Pakistan at its crisis, but. China-Pakistan relations have actually had significant tensions in recent months because of Beijing's view that Pakistan is not doing enough to help protect Chinese nationals and assets in Pakistan, to the point that, as I understand it, China has essentially sought to get Pakistan's permission to be able to use its own armed security forces in Pakistan, which is not something that Pakistan has been willing to grant to China, important ally though China is for Pakistan. So, for all this conversation, all this discussion in recent weeks about how you have this ironclad Chinese-Pakistan alliance, China supplying Pakistan with all these critical arms, lurking beneath the surface, there still is some tension in this very critical relationship that Pakistan has with China. And given how important Beijing is for Pakistan, given how important Chinese assistance is for Pakistan, that certainly is something that Islamabad and Rawalpindi particularly cannot simply shrug off.
Well, Michael, the fact that Pakistan is having difficult relationship with its very close near neighbors, Iran, Afghanistan, they've had border clashes. China, concerned about what's happening to their own interests in China, especially post the terrorist attack. And in all this, can they really afford to have the kind of acrimonious relationship they're having with India right now? India has made it very clear that it's not just about military action, that the diplomatic sanctions and financial sanctions against Pakistan are here to stay. So the water problem for Pakistan could really become a menace in some time from now. In such a scenario, can Pakistan really afford to have India, a huge country such as India, as an enemy country in the region? And more importantly, is this Asim Munir's personal, now has it become a personal ambition, personal agenda, rather than one where he's looking at what Pakistan really needs?
Yeah, I think it's very clear that Pakistan is struggling with fraught borders everywhere. Indeed, its western border with Afghanistan is very hot, in the sense that Pakistan worries about what has become an increasing surge of cross-border violence from Afghanistan in the form of TTP. And then indeed, Pakistan did have a brief military confrontation with Iran last year. And of course, the LOC is now very hot as well. So, clearly Pakistan cannot afford to have a conflict with anyone, certainly India or whatever the case may be. Yeah, I think that Islamabad has been able to ease some of these tensions in some places. We've seen in recent weeks that its tensions with the Taliban have abated a bit. There have been some senior level engagements, and its relations with Iran, which are always rather volatile, have calmed down. Though I think that so long as Pakistan faces that continuous problem of cross-border terrorism into Pakistan from Afghanistan, those tensions with the Taliban will remain in place. But look, I'll say this. Asim Munir was one of the winners from this recent crisis with India because it essentially enabled him and the military to regain some of the goodwill and the popularity that it had lost in recent years. And so theoretically, there's an opportunity for Munir to leverage that new goodwill and popularity to try to focus on internal matters. And that could entail him trying to propose some type of reconciliation with the opposition, Imran Khan. It could entail him pushing the government, the civilian leadership to initiate politically risky but essential economic liberalization reforms. But quite frankly, I don't think that's the direction he's going to go in. I mean, he is a hardliner at the end of the day, and that includes his view toward India. So I think that in the immediate term, we could see Munir essentially intensify the repression and the crackdowns that have been one of the major reasons why the military has become so unpopular in recent years. And I really do not think that he would want to be seen as trying to push for a softer position toward India, quite frankly. I just don't think that's where he would want to go. I mean, as we know, the military has tended to derive its strength and its legitimacy from this idea of India as a threat and the military as really the core protector for Pakistan in the face of that Indian threat.
Well, very significant statements and important assessment, Michael. But as somebody who watches Pakistan very closely, what do you make of Shahbaz Sharif, the Pakistani premier, visiting Turkey, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, Iran, significant countries for Shahbaz Sharif, for Pakistan, but also a very rare sight seeing the Pakistani premier visit these countries with the Pak army chief and now field marshal.
Clearly, right. Clearly, the optics are very important in this case. I mean, Pakistan's goal is to project this idea to the world that it's not isolated, that it's not going to be intimidated by what India is trying to do in terms of galvanizing the world to support India in its fight against terror. Pakistan wants to demonstrate that it's not going to be it's not that India will not succeed in that regard. And indeed, these recent visits that the Prime Minister have made have been to some of have been to some of Pakistan's closest partners. And Turkey. Sometimes we forget about Turkey when we talk about Pakistan's close ties with China and the Arab Gulf states. Turkey is a very close and significant partner for Pakistan, and we saw in the recent crisis that Pakistan was drawing on Turkish weaponry. So I think that that's sort of a precursor to this delegation that Pakistan is going to send around the world. It's not going to be as ambitious and large scale as the Indian delegation that's going to be traveling the world, but Pakistan is going to be sending a delegation to key capitals, including Washington, to try to get buy-in for Pakistan's position. And I think that Sharif's visits to these close partners are meant to serve as an opening salvo of that. And essentially the message there is that we're not isolated. We're going to push back. We're a victim of terrorism. India is an aggressor. Those types of messages coming from Pakistan. So I think that this is all part of the same dynamic and objective on the part of the Pakistanis.
Michael Kugelman, thank you so much for joining us here on the network. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Meanwhile, Pakistan's internal security situation is chaotic. Militants killed more than 2,500 people in Pakistan in 2024 alone, according to this report. And despite ongoing clashes with the Taliban and Baloch separatists, the country's top military priority remains keeping India boxed in with nuclear weapons. Add to this the tense but fragile relationship with Iran, marked by cross-border airstrikes and then urgent peace talks. And Pakistan's neighborhood looks like a powder keg waiting to blow. Bottom line, Pakistan's nuclear push isn't about defense, it's about escalation. And with China supplying the fuel, the region's stability is hanging by a thread. Thank you for watching Statecraft.